Hi and welcome to another video. Today we're gonna catch up a little bit on what happened the last 3 months. So this is my Q1 update, and then I'm also gonna talk a little bit about what I'm gonna do in the next 3 months. This might be a little rambly, but there will be timestamps down in the description, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about what happened in my life first. So if you only are interested in the languages, then feel free to skip ahead. So as you know, as the new year comes around, everyone's really excited about their goals. Everyone makes these plans and has their study schedule figured out. And that was me obviously as well. I did make really good use of that motivation for about the first couple of weeks of the new year. I would say up until February, which is when my motivation started to decline just a little bit. And then mid-February, I also flew back to Germany from the US and did not focus on too much studying during that time. When I got back to Germany, my family got sick, and so February passed and I kind of fell out of most of my habits during that time. At the same time, as I got back from the US, the JET deadline was approaching and I wanted to apply, but then things didn't work out and it was kind of stressful. And on top of that, LingQ also updated their website and it was pretty unusable for a good 3 or so weeks because everything was still really buggy and they had to fix a lot of that stuff. So all of that led to me falling out of the habits that I had built in November, December and January, so that my progress really stagnated. In March, I could finally have like a daily schedule again, which helped immensely. But I did not continue with reading or language learning for pretty much the first half of March. And I think it was just 2 weeks ago when I started writing my script for the 5 Essential Habits video that I noticed that I'm such a hypocrite because I hadn't really been following my own advice for probably the last month or so. And so I just sat down, made a study schedule for myself or things that I wanted to accomplish and just started to get back into it very slowly. So that the last 2 weeks have been pretty decent and I'm slowly trying to build these habits again that are ultimately going to help me learning languages again. And so that's where we are currently at. My progress overall has been pretty decent, but that is mainly because I did really well in January and really well in like the last 2 weeks of March. In the time between that, I've really not done a lot. And on top of that is the fact that I'm supposed to graduate soon and I only have like this one essay that I've been procrastinating on for forever, and then my final thesis that I can't do before I finish the essay. And so instead of writing the essay, I'm just making these videos, but anyways. Okay, all that to say, I started the year off really strong, then fell out of pretty much all of my habits after some life changes. And then now I'm back into it, motivated by my own video. I'll start with the priority languages that I set for this quarter and I'll then move on to all the other languages. So the first priority language was English because I had a lot of English exams this semester that I had to finish in order to graduate eventually, and for those I wanted to read a lot of literature because that was going to be the best preparation for me for those exams. I ended up reading quite a lot, but a lot of that was not literature in the sense of novels and stuff, but it was more like research papers on specific topics that helped me prepare for my exams. I also started reading Treasure Island with our book club book for February, but I could just not bring myself to finish it. I did eventually put it down and decided to not keep on reading that because I was just forcing myself through it. It was not a lot of fun. And for some reason I still struggle with this a lot, like starting to read a book but then not wanting to finish it, but I still force myself to continue reading even though I really do not enjoy it. I'm still working on that, trying to put books down that I don't like, and I'm getting better at it, but sometimes I still fall back into that mindset of I have to finish this book if I start reading it, which is honestly really unproductive. But so then for the March book club, we decided to read 1984, which I had previously read in high school, but I just wanted to read it again, so I decided to join that book club. But as of today, which is the 1st of April, I have not finished that book yet. I do plan on finishing it, but that probably won't be this next month or the month after that, but I will try to just slowly keep going through it as this quarter progresses, so that by the end of this quarter, I want to have read 1984. And I know that for someone who casually reads 300,000 words a month in other languages, that should honestly not be a struggle. But I'm not as focused on English right now as I am on other things, one of that being graduating, for which again I'll have to read a lot of research papers, so that's gonna be a lot of my English reading anyways. But I think it would still be nice to get into literature a little more, learn some more of that literary vocab to get out of my I can speak English really well but can't read. As of right now, that's the only goal I have. I don't have any other goals for the next quarter specifically, or anything after that really, because I don't know what life will look like in a couple months. Moving on to Japanese, which was my second priority language because I also had a really important exam at the end of January, I think. January looked really good. I started reading a book and finished it within the first 2 weeks of January. And then I moved on to Norwegian Wood, which just dragged on, and I did totally not enjoy the story. I mean, I was still waiting for the story to really start, even though I had already read 200 pages of like a 600-page story. So I was 1/3 through the story and there still was nothing that would excite me. So I decided to put it down, even though it was, again, way too late. I should have put it down way sooner than I did. But I was so glad to have finally put it down. And this resulted in me changing my original goal a little bit as well. At the beginning of the year, I said that I wanted to read 18 books to empty my Japanese bookshelf. Now, I noticed that there are a lot of books on there that I might not even be interested in reading anymore. So I changed the rule to be that every book that I read will be -1 on my bookshelf. So at the beginning of the year it was 18 books that I had to read. Then I finished that first book, which was Sekai kara Neko ga kieta nara. And then I moved on to Norwegian Wood, which I did read 200 pages of that, so I might count that as one really short book. And then I'm reading another book, and as of today, the 1st of April, I have not finished that book yet, but by the time this video is published, I think I might already be done with it. Check out the comments and I'll let you know if I actually managed to finish it or not. Honestly, no, this is such a motivator to get this book done, and there's not much left to finish. So we're at 15.5 books that I still have to read this year, and I am obviously a little behind, but I'm still super confident that I can actually finish this, because once I get started reading, it's really easy for me to just read and read and read and continue reading. But opening my laptop and then opening Migaku and, looking for the book, it's not a lot of work, but it feels like this huge mountain to climb. And before the link update, I would usually just default to doing this. Like I would open up Link or I would open up Migaku and I'd just start reading. But then after that big break, I would do whatever else, and that has kind of formed itself into a habit, so that I now have to counteract that. But yeah, I'm still working on figuring out my habits and making sure they're sustainable and stick with me even through this upcoming phase of a lot of stress and little time. But I'm confident that I can restore the habits that I had previously. So that's where my Japanese is currently at. I know I said at the beginning of the year that I might actually quit Japanese after I'm done with my oral exams, but I decided that I'm not gonna do that, but I'll also not be super focused on Japanese for now. Moving on to German and Dutch. Yeah, I'm glad we talked about that. No, I'm just kidding, of course. But I did set a lot of goals for those two languages, and those are probably the languages that I have done the least for. For German, I said that I wanted to read 12 books, and I'm currently at 1.2, so I'm like 50% behind because I am supposed to be at 3 books, but I'm not. But it's whatever. It's not like being behind in German is a problem at all because it is my native language and I could read a book a day if I wanted to. I could just take the next week off, read 7 books, and be good for the next couple months. But obviously the plan was to get me to read a little more regularly in German so that I could build a German reading habit as well, which, as I've already mentioned like 1,000 times, didn't happen. Quite the opposite, to be honest. I don't know how I'll handle this. Maybe I should have like a set time when I read German books, so like every weekend, every first weekend of the month or whatever. So just to give myself 3 days to read one book, and that way I could get to that book goal. But I don't know if that would be the best idea. And right now, I want to be honest, I'm not too focused on reading in German. Maybe this is something that I will push to the second half of this year after all, just because I feel like I'll have a little more time available and a little more motivation so that I can then read them in peace. And then if you thought German was bad, Dutch is even worse. I went from reading between 100 to 400k a month to reading nothing. I think I got close to 200k in January, which was still pretty decent. I finished the second book of the Outlander series, which I enjoyed a lot. And then I read like a couple chapters in January. I'm pretty sure that was while I was still in the US. And then once I came back to Germany, I never opened a Dutch book ever again. This whole situation is a little unfortunate because, as I said in the other video, I wanted to get to 3 million words read, and right now I'm probably not even at 200,000. So that leaves me with a ton of words to read, and I will not have time in the next couple, like 2 to 3 months to do that, which makes it even more unrealistic for me to read that much for the rest of the year. At the same time, I don't want to put that pressure on myself though, because I do enjoy reading in Dutch a lot and it's really easy compared to even English. So I'm not sure if I even want to continue with that pressure of having to read a certain amount of words, even though it is a pretty nice flex to have read 3 million words in a language that is not your first language. So for now, I think I'll not do any Dutch studies anymore. I might still read here and there, but I'll not be focusing on the words that I'm reading, but rather just on the story. So that means Dutch is out of here. But you know what's in here? I finally decided to start learning Korean, and so far I'm having a pretty good time. I made a video on how I plan on approaching this language, as well as a 1-month update, so if you want to check that out, feel free to do so. And the next update is due in about a month, so I'll not talk too much about it right here. All I'm gonna say here is that I finally started to get a little bit into the grammar, which is helping so much. Anyone that says grammar study is useless, you don't know what you're talking about. And I actually have a video upcoming about grammar and how to study that, so stay tuned for that. But studying Korean grammar is helping me so much understand the sentence cards, understanding the grammar, understanding what I'm reading. So I finally made quite a big breakthrough, even though I'm obviously still a super beginner. But I cannot stress enough how much grammar is helping me. And then last on the list is Spanish. I said that I wanted to get back into Spanish sometime during this year, but I didn't really know when, and I didn't expect it to be so soon, but here we are. Sometime after I got back to Germany, I just randomly was suggested a Spanish video, and I watched it, and I was blown away by how much I could still understand, and that, well, I mean, understand is maybe a little bit of a stretch, but it's more like I can follow along what's happening in the video. So then I just decided that I wanted to switch things up a little bit and get back into studying it. I'm using the textbook that we used in my Spanish class last year, and I think we made it to about chapter 10 out of 18, and those are thick chapters. Like, there's stuff for grammar, there is stuff for writing text, there's stuff for listening comprehension. So working through these takes quite a lot of time. But so the first 8 chapters, I'm just going through the grammar part and doing the grammar exercises, maybe taking a few notes and looking up stuff on Google if I don't understand something. And then from chapter 8 onward, I'll probably go through the book like you would in a class and maybe do some of the exercises, make sure I understand all the sentence patterns and understand how the grammar works in context so that I can actually then use it. I don't know how long this process is going to take me getting through all the 18 chapters, but I think at about 1 chapter a week I should be pretty good, and then I should be done by summer. So that's the goal for now. And then what I started doing really recently, like a couple days ago, is trying to find people on Tandem to chat with. Because I'm honestly kind of done inputting all day and studying grammar, and it does get a little tiring after a while, so I want to use that language that I'm learning, and I want to talk to people and interact with them, even if that interaction currently looks pretty basic. Oh, I forgot to mention this, but I also started reading the third Harry Potter book again. And when I first opened Link and started to read, I remembered how painful it is to read things that you don't understand really well. Because even though there's not super many unknown words, there's still enough for it to be quite a tedious process, looking everything up and figuring out the sentence structure and so on. For a while I was thinking if I should go back to graded readers, but I think that would be too boring because I already read most of what I have as graded readers. And so I might just try to stick with Harry Potter, see if it gets better within the first 2 or so chapters, which I think it should. It's just that I'm a little rusty right now. And then from there it's hopefully smoother sailing. But I'll see. If it turns out to be just too difficult, then I'll scrap that book and I'll try to find something easier, because I don't want it to turn into some kind of torture session. But I'm definitely excited. It's funny because as I was scripting this video, obviously I noticed like all the notes I took for my other languages and all of the things that I do for Spanish. And I am seeing quite a difference there in how much I do for Spanish and how much I do for other languages. But I'm having fun and I'm excited to build those reading habits again, so I don't really see a problem with that. Well, and that's all the languages that I am going to study or not going to study anymore in the next quarter. It is honestly a little chaotic and there is a lot of change coming my way. So it is a little hard to find direction and set these rules for myself, but I'll try my best to stick to my own advice, building these habits that do make me a better language learner and just keep progressing. I hope that by the time the next update rolls around, I'll have found a little more stability and a little more certainty in what's going to happen next, and I'm really excited for whatever is coming, but right now I don't know what that will look like yet. I'm also curious to hear about what your first quarter was like and what you have planned for the second quarter. Thank you for listening to this ramble, however long it turns out to be after I edit it, and I'll see you